Hello everybody and welcome to YouTube's Scale Modeling channel. Today we're going to start a multi-part series on building the Revell-Monogram 148 scale B-29. And I put the Monogram 148 scale B-17G beside it in order to show you the difference in the size of these two models. This kit measures 33 inches from wingtip to wingtip. Many of us bought this kit many years ago when Monogram issued it, and it's been sitting in our stash all these years. But this year I decided to pull mine out and build it. And I also decided to use the olive drab paint scheme that was applied to the B-29s that flew out of India to bomb Japan. So with that said, let's get started building this great kit. The areas of the fuselage that you need to be concerned about are the bomb bay and of course the forward cockpit area. And in the bomb bay you've got some mold punch outs. These are pretty high, so I tried to scrape them down with a stencil knife a little bit, but you'd be hard pressed to try to eliminate these without damaging any of this ribbing. So what I did was I used 20 thousandths by .250 strips and form fitted them into place and put a drop of tester's glue behind each one and just put them in place. So once this is airbrushed, you're not going to see any of it. But it eliminated all of those nasty mold punch outs. Now, on the forward part of the fuselage, you don't need to do that. These are easy to sand out with a surgical sanding stick. So that's what I'll do here on these four and on these mold punch outs here. So yeah, that's how you do it. And it'll look pretty good once it's painted. The bomb bays and the landing gear doors, the main landing gear doors on the B-29 have got these mold punch outs and some fairly large ones on the bomb bay doors. So these would be really hard to sand out without damaging the surrounding rivet detail. These can kind of be sanded out, but you're still going to damage some of the rivet detail even if you use a surgical sanding stick. So I tried doing that and it came out okay, but I lost a lot of the rivet detail and I just didn't like the way it came out. So what I ended up doing was what I've done on other kits where it's really hard to get rid of these mold punch outs, is I covered them. And I covered them with 10 thousandths strip that I cut into 12 32nds of an inch wide to cover the large mold punch outs. Now the one thing I did do was I very carefully, using this rough edge here, I sanded around the rim of each one of these mold punch outs to kind of flatten it with the surrounding surface so that these plastic strips wouldn't stick up. So here's one of the spare plastic strip, and what I did was rolled it around a small handled X-Acto blade and you get a nice curve, and you can change the curve, make it more or less of a curve, but this is pretty much all you need, and it'll sit right in there. So that's what I did on all of the bomb bay doors. And once they're painted, airbrushed, and a little bit of weathering, you're going to be hard pressed to see them. But this is the best you can do. And the doors are a little thin. On the actual bomb bay doors are a bit thicker, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it. Now on the main landing gear doors, I didn't attempt to try to sand these out because they're indented, which means you're going to get a bump here. So this is how I covered them, and I used 0.125 inch wide 10,000 strips that are really, really thin. And again, I used this handle to create the curves and then kind of bent them more like this to get them to fit correctly inside here. So let me get these out of the way. This is how I did these. So these are now ready to be airbrushed, and everything's been cleaned. I did that with all of the parts on this kit before I did any work on them. And then, of course, they've all been cleaned up with the side molds and the connection points with the tree stubs. Everything's been cleaned up. So these are ready, and I've got some challenges inside of the fuselage with heavy mold punch outs that I need to deal with, and we'll figure out how to do that. So this is how I've fixed these parts, and it'll look pretty good once it's airbrushed. I glued together all of the bombs with Testor's tube glue, and there's 2 positioning tabs on each one, and for the most part they fit together. On a few of them the fins were kind of warped out a little bit, so after the glue dried on the main part of the bomb, I put a little super glue in between the fins and just held them tight. So when that was done, and then I ran a bead of super glue all along these areas here, like I do on all my bomb construction. And they're a little offset on the fin areas, but that'll be easy to fix. So what I'll do is I'll take a surgical sanding stick, sand this down very, very lightly, and then what I'll do is use a thicker sanding stick for these areas of the fins. For the back here, I'll run it across a stationary piece of sandpaper and smooth it out. And then when I'm done, I'll probably scrape it a little bit with my trusty number 11 at about a 45-degree angle, and then I'll use a flexifile to reshape the curvature of the bombs. So each one take about 10-15 minutes to do. But what you don't want to do is break these tiny tabs off on the front here. They spin as the bomb drops. So yeah, they're coming along. There's 12 of them. B-29 carried a big bomb load. So when I'm done, I'll show you what they look like. And then they'll get primed, a coat of flat white, a coat of flat yellow, the stripes for the yellow stripes, and then I'll probably paint them both flat black and olive drab, so there'll be a variance of color, because some bombs were black and some bombs were olive drab. And that'll look good. I purchased the Edward resin tire set for my B-29 build, and looks pretty good. So when you go to cut these off, you cut here and then cut here, and the whole thing snaps off, and this is what I use to do the cutting. And so the other thing is that's a solid center there, and there's a dimple, and the dimples are a little off-centered. So what I did was I drilled these out so that the kit supplied axles will sit correctly inside the tires. So this is what you get. You get the separate hubs right here, and you cut with a sharp razor saw like this right along that line there, just at the base, so that when you're done, it looks like this. Now when you're done cutting, you run it across a stationary piece of sandpaper or a sanding stick, and to flatten it out. And then here's the back side of that. So the other thing is that there is a key right here And on each one of these hubs, there is a corresponding key right there. The problem is that it interferes with how the hub sits on this inner rim. So what I did was I cut them off. The other slight modification I made was that on the edge here, after I sanded it down, on this edge, I took my number 11 and just kind of scraped a little bit along the edge there to round it off a little bit, and that made a big difference in how it sits inside here. Now, the other thing is when I glued this one, which is assembled, I used slow set super glue, and that gave me a tiny bit of working time. So now the tires will fit like they're supposed to on the hubs, and it's fairly strong. What you're going to have to do there, because it's got a flat side here, is you position everything in place on the wing and fuselage assembly, put the landing gear in, and then one by one you've got to set these tires so that it's positioned properly on the flat side. But these tires look a lot better than the Monogram tires. And I'm going to go ahead and assemble the Monogram tire, just one, just to see how it works. But you're going to lose a lot of this tread detail, which is going to be really hard to redo and very, very time consuming. I've done it, but it's very, very hard to do. So that's why I chose these resin tires, and they'll look a lot better. And it's nice tread detail. Now, once you get this off, you've got a little bit along these edges here and here, and you just use a sanding stick and wet sand it so that you don't breathe any of this dust, and you can see where they've been cleaned up. And then you take a brush and just clean all that stuff off. So yeah, these will look really, really good. I haven't, I'll have to do a separate shoot on the front landing gear wheels, because I got to work with them and probably modify those too. So this is how you do it. Now on the landing gear, all of the photos that I took of B-29s at different air museums around the country, there's a round hole here and here. In addition to that, there is a round hole here on this side of the oleo jack and on this side. So I'll be able to do that to modify them, but here's how they look inside of their positioning holes. And you need to clean these up a little bit to get them to fit snugly inside here. And on the landing gear bays themselves, there's mold punch outs, and so I'll cover these with small pieces of 10,000ths squares, and then I got to scrape that off. I don't know why Monogram does that, but this is an original Monogram kit that I have. So once that's done, I'll be ready to install these. Now, the other thing is, these are left and right on the kit, so don't mix them up. So once I get the landing gear cleaned up and modified so it looks a little more accurate, I'll show you what that looks like. The other thing is, there's a rectangular box that sits on this side, and it's a solid piece. It's hollow on the inside, but it's all solid on the outside. There's an oblong shaped hole on either one of these sides, and I'm going to try to duplicate that too. So when we get to that, I'll show you. So these are a little bent, but once everything's put in place and glued, it's going to look pretty good. So Monogram did a really nice job on this. I've got the mold punch outs covered, and they came out pretty good. I used 15 thousandths plastic and 3 different widths: 0.100, 0.125, and 0.156. And yeah, so now they're covered. And once this is airbrushed, you're not going to notice any of that. And I scraped down that wording there, copyright wording, and that just covered it over. And I used slow set super glue to give me a little bit of working time, and just a little drop was all you need. So these are ready for airbrushing and installation, and I've got the landing gear done. So the resin wheels, they wiggle a little bit, but that's okay. I'll set them in place one at a time with slow set, and that'll give me just a little bit of working time. So what I did to add a little bit more detail to it was I drilled 2 holes up here, which is, if you look at detail shots of the real landing gear, in fact, there are 2 holes up there. The framing around the edges is more pronounced, but Monogram didn't do that. Now, I would drill through the front side so that if you skew the drill bit a little bit, like I did on this one, you won't really see it on the back side. So the other thing I did is the oleo scissor. They have holes here and here, and the oleos are not exactly formed the way they should be, but they're close. So what I did was I drilled holes, and I used the largest bit is 0.052, but I started real small and slowly worked my way up. And the reason that you have to do that especially is when I tested it on this extra landing gear, what happened was it chipped a little bit around the edges. So that told me that you need to go slow and every other bit. So I started with a real small bit after I center punched, so the bit would know where to start, and then slowly enlarged it. And I did the same thing here. So that one is 0.053, and these larger ones are 0.063, or I'm sorry, 0.052 and 0.063. So the other thing is that this tip snapped on me, and this one actually broke at the base. And I think they were damaged in the kit packaging. I have an original Monogram, and they didn't do a very good job packaging stuff back then. So here's the second one, same thing. And so how I tried just gluing it together with super glue, and it kind of worked, and then I hit it and it just snapped right off. So what I did was, to make it stronger, I used 0.030 rods, in this case Plastistruck rods, and drilled a 0.032 inch hole after I center punched on this edge and this edge, super glued the rod length in there, and just form fitted it into place on this one, and that made it a lot stronger. And then I put slow set around the perimeter, and that seemed to make it very strong. And I did the same on this one right here. And you got to be very, very careful drilling that. They're not 100% straight, but they weren't 100% straight. I noticed them when I got the kit opened up. But once you put them in place, like this, you can move them a little bit. So you got to move them from here. And then they'll fit in place quite nicely. And this one will go here. There we go, just like that. See the height on that one? That one's a little too high. And that one, I think, is a little too low. So I'm going to have to form fit them into place. I'll have to put this piece, the door actuator goes here, and then there's a hole in the face of it for that pin right there. And the actuator door has to actually lean a little bit this way. It has to lean a little bit that way for everything to connect together. So, once I get everything in place and get it glued up, we'll see how it looks. But that's about the best you can do accurizing these landing gear. Now there's a box back here. I haven't done that yet. That box goes here, and there's oblong shaped sides on the whole, oblong shaped holes on the sides, and I got to figure out how to do that. So that'll be next, and I'll do one and show you how I did it, and then I'll get the other one done. So there you have it. And these wheels fit really well. I still need to do the forward wheels for the forward landing gear, just not there yet. So they came out pretty good. Little enhancements, and these incremental enhancements, the landing gear, the engines, the exhaust ports, all these things add up to enhance the appearance of the model. I've modified the Edward forward landing gear tires, and this one is the finished one, and it came out pretty good. So what you get for a hub that sits on this side is this, and then they give you a photo etch disc cover to put over this, because this is supposed to be spoked like they did on this side, but for some strange reason they didn't do it on this other hub, the outer hub. So I modified it so that it is more accurate, and here's how I did it. Went ahead and, of course, cut this off with my trusty razor saw, cleaned up the edges. Now, there's a tab here, and if you don't remove that tab, which goes in that corresponding hole right there, what happens is the hub sticks up a little bit. So to fix that, you need to remove that tab right there. Now, how I got the hollow effect of the hub spokes is, you'll notice there's a little bit of elevation here on the area between the spokes. So what you do is you carve that down a little bit like this and remove that mound and go a little bit further, and what it does is it thins it out to the point where you could go on this side with a small tiny drill bit and just punch it out. And that's how I did it. And then the other thing I did was I ran it across this sanding stick right here, just a few passes, flatten that out a little bit so it fit better, and that's the result. The other thing you need to do before you glue that hub on is you need to drill out where the axles go, And I did that so that the axles will fit correctly on the tires, and I drilled it out to 0.086 with this bit here. And then I had to go a little bit further because it was a little bit off-centered, kind of get in there on this side and just carve it out a little bit. The other thing I did was I thinned the axles out a little bit so that everything now fits. And this one fits on this side. Here we go. So hang on, let me get this flat side right there. There we go. Not bad. So this one is not as straight as it should be, so what I'll do is I got to cut a little bit off, and I had to do it on this side. So just be aware that the way to fix that is just cut a little bit off on this side so you get a little bit of wiggle room, and that'll straighten that out. So, but yeah, it's looking pretty good. I like the effect. And now it's more accurate. So that's how you do it. And then the forward landing gear, it had a pinhole here. I just filled it with some medium set super glue, and then I cleaned up the mold lines. There was a mold punch out here and here. I cleaned those up, and there was a third one right there, and cleaned those up. And I just did it with X-Acto number 11, and you just go slow. And so what I'll do now is I gotta prime it and see what areas I missed, clean it up a little bit more if needed to be, and it'll be ready to go. So, and these will be painted steel, and I'll use chrome color down here for the oleo. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. I like it. And I just need to glue that one on there. I've got some of the sub-assemblies done, and the forward landing gear bay, what I did was I taped it together, all three sides, and then just glued this side and this side. And I think these bottles, I'm going to paint a different color than the interior color. And then all I got to do is pop it in place and super glue it. So the other thing is, there's this small piece here that's a separate piece. It doesn't fit very well, and there's a locating pin right under here. If you cut out the locating pin and carve down the interior a little bit, it'll sit level. And I used a stencil knife to do that. So that worked out real well. So this will be ready to go. The forward cockpit area has got 3 sub-assemblies, and this one is the flight engineer's station right here. And I've got, years ago, Pro Modeler came out with a set of decals for this face, but nothing here. So I'm not sure how I'll detail this yet. I'm still going to figure that out. But anyway, I got this side cleaned up because you'll see it a little bit looking at an angle here. Not going to worry about this because this goes up against the side of the fuselage. Now, the pilot and co-pilot consoles are 2 parts, and you got to be careful with this black plastic. It's just different. It responds differently to scraping and to sanding, so you got to be really, really careful. And it's got that small angle area there, so I've got this one done, and came out pretty good, because you're going to see this through the front of the glass and the top of the glass. And again, Pro Modeler has decals for this, and so I'll check the fit, and then I'll install these decals at the appropriate time. So, but yeah, you got to get rid of these seams because you're going to see them. So that's these. The crawl space goes together better if you remove the locating pins, and there's a set of locating pins here and on this end here. So I cut the locating pins, and there were a few bumps along the gluing surfaces, and I flattened them out. Then what I did was I taped it together really tight on both sides after positioning it properly. And you need to make sure that this end here and this end are properly positioned so that it'll fit correctly inside of the top of the bulkheads on both sides of the bomb bay, which are right here. So then what I did was I just peeled back the tape on one side, opened it up like a sandwich, and put some slow zap along the edges where the gluing surfaces were. Just a little bit's all you need. And it doesn't have to be along the entire surface, just like every inch or so. And then I closed up the sandwich, tightened it up with the tape, and just let it dry. So that came out pretty good. Now, when you install this, if you install this so that you can see the seam up through here, up through the bottom of the bomb bay, you're going to have to fix this. If you install it this way, all you're going to see is this. So the instructions have you doing it this way, just turn it a little bit this way, and you pretty much don't need to do anything because you're not going to see much up through here. What you want to be able to see is this, not this. So that's the way I'll do it. Now, the wing supports, mine are grossly bent. Really bad. They're just, and I think they're like that in a lot of kits. So I installed these first to check the fit. Everything fit right. There was a little bit of a problem with these mole punch outs, so I was just sanding them down a little bit so they would slide in and out of the fuselage openings better. And then what I did was, what's really strange from the way Monogram did this is this black piece has got two locating pins here and here, but only one locating pin on this side, which is really weird. I guess they forgot it. So for the side that has this positioning surface right here, what I did was I put some tester's glue here and then kind of put it in place, let it sit for a minute, and then installed this entire assembly inside of the fuselage, closed up the fuselage, and that gave me enough time to adjust the positioning of this. And then what I did was I hit this edge with tiny drops of the medium set super glue, let it all dry, pulled it out, and then reinforced the interior with super glue along here and along here. And then there's some openings here that you need to cover somehow, so I used 40 thousandths half round, evergreen half round, just to cover them up. Once it's painted, you're really not going to see it. And then to make this really strong, because this is the wing spar, and this is technically, this is a solid piece. And if you look at some of the videos of the construction of this aircraft at the Wichita plant, the whole top part of the fuselage is connected to the wing spar here. This is a solid piece, and it drops right down into the assembly of the fuselage. So what I did was I made some braces to make this very strong, and then I have another set of braces, and once I get it into the fuselage and glued into place, then what I'll do is I'll install these braces right along here, and that will help straighten this out and make this stronger. So that's how you fix that problem. And so that's it for pretty much all the sub-assemblies that I'm going to do. So the next thing I need to do is go ahead and do a tape up and get the weight and balance correct on this. And I've got some ideas on how to do that. Most people just put all of the weights in the front of the fuselage, which creates a problem because that landing gear is not as strong as it looks. So I've got some other ideas on weight and balance that might work, and I'll give it a try, and we'll see how it looks. So that's it for all the sub-assemblies. I've got some detail work that I've added to the cockpit area because it's going to be very noticeable. So let me start with the floor. These are the adjustments for the trim tabs, and they're not very big, so I added some discs that were punched out with my Waldron punch, and that helped. There was a depression here, so I added a punch here. You're not going to see it once the bomb sight's in place. And I added tape where all of the parts are going to be glued to, so I wouldn't have to scrape it off later on. And there'll be a colored placard here. The Edward pre-painted color placards for the cockpit for the 1/48 scale B-29 have long been discontinued, and I've been checking on eBay every day for 6 months. There's nothing. So I'll show you what I did here in a minute. But so these are the changes I made to this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do here. I may drill these out and then add some levers like I've done with this, and I'll show you in a minute, but I'm still kind of undecided on that. On the engineer's station, where he controls all of the engines, what I did was I drilled between the tracks here, I drilled 0.018 inch holes for levers. And I've got 0.015 inch rod here that I painted with a red indelible ink marker. And I also did the same with some silver. So that'll accent the levers. And years ago, Monogram came out with a set of decals for this. And so I'll show you those in just a second, but I'm going to use the decal here. I had to trim it up a little bit. It was a little bit longer on this side, so I trimmed it up so that it's a good fit. So that'll enhance this. The enhancements for the bulkhead here, I drilled out these holes. I sanded down the punches. You don't need to worry about these because that's where the seats go. And you got to trim these down a little bit to get them to get this to slide down correctly into the slots here. So, and I'll add two little doodads, pre-painted doodads here from a B-17 kit. And again, I'll show you all that in a sec. On the seats, there isn't a whole lot you can do. I sanded this down a little bit to get rid of the raised relief on these molded on seat belts. And I drilled some holes and just carved it out a little bit with the tip of a number 11, because the seat belts actually go through this area here. They don't go over the top. They go through, there's an opening here. So I've got some seat belts that'll fit in here nicely and cover these molded ons, and then a set of seat belts to cover these molded on lap belts. So I did that on both of these. On the instrument consoles for the pilot and co-pilot, again, Monogram came out with a set of decals for these. Had to trim them just a little bit, but they'll look a lot better, and I'll show you those too in a sec. This is the radio box that sits on the forward bulkhead of the fuselage on the port side, and this one, which is the radar, sits on the starboard side, and I've got a small strip of colored placards to go here and two colored placards that will go on this one. So those are the additions that I made to the parts. And let me go ahead and turn the camera off because I got to raise it up a little bit, and then I'll show you all the doodads that I created from my spare parts box on Edward pre-painted placards. As I've showed you on my other builds, this is how I organize all my pre-painted placards, and I label everything with pieces of index cards. So we'll start with the decals here from Monogram. Those are the decals. And then what I did was I cut out a lot of spare parts from my spare parts box for Edward pre-painted placards. And as I've done with my other kits, and I've showed you this, I add 15 thousandths plastic to the backing, which is all super glued into place on a larger strip, and then I just cut it out. And I ink the sides of these with an indelible, black indelible marker. So now all I need to do is put a tiny drop of Tester's standard plastic glue, and that gives me a little bit of working time. If you just try to set these in place with super glue, it's an instantaneous bond, and the chances of it being crooked are pretty good. So again, I highly recommend that you add plastic to the back of these. And I even added plastic to the backing on these very, very small discs. Here's the face of it, and here's the backing of it, which is a plastic disc. So now a tiny drop of Tester's glue will glue it into place, and I have adjustment time. So I really, really highly encourage you to do that. It takes a little bit more time. Oh, the other thing is, always make sure that you clean the backings of the photo etch, because there's a chemical on there. And I use these small sanding strips to clean the backings so that the super glue will stick good. So once all these enhancements are installed on Cockpit, along with painting, detail painting, as well as the scratch-built enhancements, it'll look pretty good. Is it accurate? No. But you know what? Once you close up the fuselage and put the canopy glass in place, it's going to look really, really good. So this is the best you can do. Verlinden once called the addition of tiny parts to a cockpit doodads. And he was right. You add all these tiny doodads. And if you don't have one of these, I suggest you get one. These Waldron punch and die sets, I bought this over 30 years ago, and it's still good. And I use it for so many different things, especially scratch building small discs. These tiny discs, I don't know if you can see them here, there's tiny, tiny discs. These tiny discs will be painted red, and they will go right here in these little openings here. These little circular openings right here, that's where they'll go. So all these little enhancements will really help make the cockpit stand out, and having a variance of colors also helps. Red, silver, olive drab for canvas, all kinds of neat stuff. And this hatch, I'm going to have this partially opened. So on the underside, this is where I'll add the weight along here, and in this area here, and I'll super glue all that into place before I go ahead and paint. So yeah, it's come along pretty good. So for an old kit, it's going to look pretty good when it's done. The biggest challenge here is going to be making sure that the canopy glass, the two pieces, fit correctly. And we'll see how that goes. But so far, so good.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching part 1 of our multi-part series on building the Revell-Monogram 148 scale B-29. And stay tuned for part 2. I should have it up in about a week. Also, I wanted to mention to you, for those of you who are pretty observant, yeah, there's something wrong with my left eye. I had some serious surgery done on it, so hopefully as it heals, it'll look a little bit better. The second thing I wanted to mention is that I shut down my website after about 20 years, and I'm going to transfer most of the information from my website to my YouTube channel. It's going to take some time, so you got to be patient with me. With that said, give us a thumbs up, have a great evening, and happy scale modeling.